Let me tell you about the most frustrating afternoon I've had in my career. It's honestly up there with some of the wildest encounters I've ever had. I've been a cop for almost 10 years in a pretty upscale neighborhood, so I've seen some things, but this one really took the cake. Now, before I get into it, let me say I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of my community and the years I've spent earning my place. But sometimes the sheer nerve of certain people just blows my mind. I was heading home after a particularly draining shift, had to deal with a messy domestic argument and a teenager caught joyriding in a stolen car. You know, the usual chaos. All I wanted was a nice, quiet night, a shower, takeout, and some TV. So I roll into my driveway, hit the garage door opener, and wait. Here's the thing. My garage door's a bit of a diva. Sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate, and you have to give it a little nudge. So I pull up closer, give it a soft push with the front bumper of my car, and it starts to open. That's when I spot it, an obnoxiously bright orange SUV. The kind of car that screams, "I live for brunch." And of course, it's parked half on the sidewalk and half on my lawn, directly in front of my garage. I sigh. Of course. I get out, and this woman waddles out from behind the wheel. She looked like a walking advertisement for overpriced face treatments, blonde hair, frozen smile, and an outfit that screamed, "I don't know the meaning of personal space." Her face looked like she'd permanently smelled something bad. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone level, "you're blocking my driveway." She gave me a look that could sour milk. "I'm just waiting for my friend. She'll be out in a minute." "Ma'am," I said, "you're not supposed to park here. You're blocking my garage, and you're partially on my lawn." She huffed, dramatically rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, relax. It'll be just a second." At that point, I felt my patience slipping. "A second," I said, pointing to my watch. "I've already been waiting 5 minutes. You need to move now, or I'll call a tow." I reached for my notepad, preparing to write her a citation. That's when she hit me with it. Her entitlement hit max level. She planted her hands on her hips, looked me up and down with a sneer, and said, "You're going to give me a ticket? You don't even look like a cop." I froze. "Excuse me. You don't look like a cop," she said again, folding her arms. Probably some guy trying to act tough. I couldn't believe it. I took a deep breath. I've had my share of disrespect, but this was next level. I tried to stay professional. "Ma'am, I'm a police officer. I'm off duty right now, but that doesn't change the fact that you're illegally parked." I reached into my car, pulled out my badge, and held it up for her to see. She barely glanced at it. "Please," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "That's probably fake. I've never seen you around here before. You're just a scammer trying to get into my garage." I was speechless. "A scammer," I repeated, staring at her incredulously. "I'm standing right here, showing you my badge, and you think I'm a scammer?" "Yes," she said, with complete confidence. "You probably stole that badge. I'm calling the cops on you." She whipped out her phone with an exaggerated flourish and started dialing. I just stood there, suppressing the urge to snap. "Go ahead," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "I'll be right here." Internally, I was livid. I knew exactly how this would play out. She was going to call 911, claim I was a fraud, and likely accuse me of something ridiculous. As she spoke on the phone, I caught pieces of her conversation. "Yes, I'm at neighborhood name, and this man is saying he's a cop. But I don't believe him. He's trying to break into my garage, and he's black." I felt the sting of blatant racism. I've dealt with microaggressions before, the occasional glance or side comment, but this was a direct assault on my character. "Ma'am," I said, my voice low and tight, "I'm not trying to get into your garage. I'm trying to get into my garage, which you're blocking. And the color of my skin has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a legitimate officer." She ignored me, still chatting away with the operator, her voice shrill and full of accusations. I stood there, fists clenched, just waiting for the real officers to arrive, hoping they'd use their common sense. After what felt like forever, I saw the flashing lights of a patrol car. 2 officers stepped out. One of them was Officer Jones, a good guy who had been on the force for just as long as I had. He looked at me in confusion when he saw me standing there in regular clothes. "Chris, what's going on?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Before I could answer, the woman Letty cut in. "Officer, this man is impersonating a cop. He tried to break into my garage, and showed me what he claimed was a badge, but it looked fake. Jones glanced from Letty to me, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Ma'am, could you please step aside for a moment? I need to talk to Officer Chris." He made the correction almost immediately. He walked over to me, lowering his voice. "Chris, what's happening here?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "She's claiming you tried to break into her garage and that you're pretending to be a cop." I explained everything as calmly as I could, pointing out my blocked driveway and the woman's obvious bias. Jones listened carefully, his expression growing more serious by the second. "Okay," he said, "I'm going to need to see your ID and badge to clear this up." I handed him both, and he checked everything carefully. After a tense moment, he let out a whistle. "Everything checks out, Chris. You're good." Jones turned back to Letty, his face hardening. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your ID and registration for this vehicle." She puffed out her chest, clearly thinking she'd won. Finally, "Are you arresting him now?" Ignoring her, Jones repeated his request. Reluctantly, Letty rummaged through her purse and handed over her information. Jones went back to the patrol car to run her details through the system. The younger officer, Davis, stayed with Letty, eyeing her carefully. A few minutes passed in tense silence, and I could feel Letty's glare burning into my back. Finally, Jones came back, his face unreadable. There was a hint of shock, a touch of disbelief, and something else I couldn't quite place. "Ma'am," he said coldly, "there are some issues with your information. The address on your license doesn't match the one registered to this vehicle." Letty flushed a deep red. "What? That's impossible. I live at fake address." Jones raised an eyebrow. "Actually, ma'am, our records show that the address on your license is linked to, let's just say it's not a residential address." I could see the panic in her eyes as her bravado started to crumble. "What do you mean?" she stammered, her confidence vanishing. Jones didn't answer right away. "Ma'am, did you know that this car has several outstanding parking fines and unpaid tolls?" Letty's face went crimson. "I don't know what you're talking about." Jones gave a heavy sigh. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the vehicle. Officer Davis, can you run her name and date of birth?" Davis nodded and guided her to the back of his patrol car. Jones turned to me, his voice low. "Chris, this is complicated. Her license is valid, but the address on it leads to a P.O. box, and the SUV's registered to a company, not her. Plus, she's got a history of minor offenses, mostly traffic violations." As the situation unfolded, I could feel the tide turning in my favor. The air between Letty and the officers shifted from tense to accusatory, and her facade began to crack. Jones and Davis weren't just seeing through her lies. They were uncovering the deeper layers of her entitled behavior. For me, it was a strange mix of relief and frustration. The fact that it took this much just to prove I was who I said something troubling about the world we live in. Letty's confidence was now replaced with defensive floundering, and in the end, she had nowhere left to hide. While she fumbled with her excuses, I couldn't help but feel a small victory in knowing that the truth had won out, no matter how long it took. In this job, sometimes it's not about the badge you wear, but the integrity you uphold. And for me, that's always enough. As Letty's bravado crumbled, I walked away with the knowledge that truth and patience always outweigh entitlement and lies.